Sorry, why did you want to meet? Simon.
He's lied and cheated. He's bullied me. I'm sure he treats the other women he sees just as badly.
So what do you want then? Do you remember that one day after school with the pigeon?
What you did seemed to come so naturally to you.
You've been speaking to Guillaume very just recently, yeah. So I'll say the same to him first of all. Fantastic movie. It felt almost like, I mean, I know it was a play originally, but it really felt like an updated version of kind of Agatha Christie's The Mousetrap or something like that. But on film, it's fantastic. I loved it to bits.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Thank you. That's good to hear.
Uh-huh. So, I mean, the first thing I want to ask you, obviously, is you've been involved with the play for many years now already. So this is your baby from a long time coming. So I'm curious about what was the actual genesis for this idea, because it deals a lot around the kind of the cause and effects of violence and trauma. I'm curious about kind of the genesis. Was that the actual seed for the play, or did kind of you had this idea of these two women and then that came from another idea?
No, that's exactly the seed of the play that
Right.
kind of that got into my head, and I wrote it as a short play first. The first sort of little chunk of it up to the bit where she asks Carla to murder her husband, and sort of the result, it was for a little short play festival in Bristol, and the sort of the feedback was, you know, that people asking, oh, what happens next? And I wrote it when quite soon after I'd had my first kid, and I was in a sort of world of sleep deprivation and like also panic because I thought, oh God, I've had a kid. You know, my theatre career, I didn't know what was going to happen with it, and I was sort of desperately trying to sort of think of things that I could write. And I think I was kind of essentially in quite a sort of stressed and tired and slightly violent place in my head, and this play kind of saved me from essentially throwing my baby out a window. Do you know what I mean? Because I was
Yeah, I was
like,
going to say, I mean, it's a really dark material, but at the same time, I guess from where you were at that time, it was very cathartic in a way as well, no?
yeah, it really was. And I think I was sort of like trying to figure out all sorts of stuff around, yeah, but violence between women and girls, the psychology that is used in those sorts of scenarios and in bullying scenarios, but also in a more practical sense. Like I'm always interested to write roles for women, like, and I was sort of digging around for when I was a teenager trying to be an actor. I was sort of digging around for a duologue to do with a friend of mine, and we couldn't find anything, and we did Harold Pinter's The Dumb Waiter, and it was so fun and dark and twisty and funny, and I sort of remember that I was like, oh, I want to write something that is that fun for two women to do. And so that's so coupled with this interest in, you know, oh, why don't we have more naughty characters that are women that are really, that you don't know who you're supposed to like and you don't know who you're supposed to agree with, because you sort of agree with that one, but then you also really agree with that one, and also you don't like the behavior of that one or that one, and you don't, you know, you're invested in them and you want to go along on the ride. I like all of those things kind of came together to make this sort of strange, dark twisty thriller thing that I wrote in a very, very blurry haze at a very particular time of my life. But it kind of created this play that has been, you know, it's done everywhere because it's, you know, it's a two-hander, so it's very popular for women to do, and it's fun. It's fun to do. It's fun to perform. It's fun to, you know, make. So it was such a gift to be able to put it into film form. Actually.
I mean, you mentioned there that there's this balance that we don't know whether we should be on one side of the scale or the other side of the scale, because it's a play and it's like you said, a two-hander. That really depends on the script and on these two actors, no? But at the same time, when we put that onto the screen, it's a completely different ballgame. Obviously, the two lead characters in the script are very important, but at the same time, how the director approaches everything that you've put onto the page and the actors is a whole new different ballgame. How involved were you in that, and what would you say made Guillen just the perfect choice for this adaptation?
We met for a cup of tea on the South Bank when he was sort of being touted for it, and we just got on so instantly. And I love his work. I love Julia's Eyes. I love his work on Inside Number 9. And so I was a bit of a fan. Like I was kind of like, oh my God, this is. But the way he spoke about it, the way he just understood it, he understood those power shifts. He understood that essentially it's a game between the two characters of like who's in charge at any one moment. Like that's the offer of it in theatre and in the film script as well, is like you have to figure out at any one time who's the one in charge at that moment, and like it kind of bounces back between them. And he really understood that, the rhythm of it, and how you kind of, he had to find a way to both, that you can't let up, you have to kind of go on this ride with them and like lock in with them and go with that flow. And the way he spoke about that, the way he honored the stuff around the women and the history of them and the way that girls treat each other, like he really sort of, asked me questions about all of that. I just totally trusted him. So we just, I did a few sort of changes based on his notes. We added some stuff in, but essentially he just got it. And we went off to Bath to have a walk around together, because I was a teenager in Bath, so I was able to kind of take him to all the bits that I was like, oh, this would be really good to film in. And actually there's one scene which is literally at the end of the road where I used to live, and I remember taking him round there, and so there's some really lovely sort of moments in that came from our little walk around of Bath. And yeah, it was just, he's just brilliant. He's brilliant. He
Nice,
knew what to do.
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just speaking to him now, I said that I'm not a fan of flashbacks, because I don't want to spoil any of the plot, but there are quite a few reasons for flashing back in the movie. But he does it in a really succinct way that we don't really know that we're going back in time, which I thought was brilliantly done compared to how it was done on stage, and how he managed to bring that through in the film adaptation. How was that process for you?
Well, I mean, obviously we didn't have flashbacks in the stage version.
Sure, I was going to imagine, yeah.
All monologues, but actually it was a gift to be able to, because otherwise you can't. I mean, there are still plenty of monologues in the film, but the flashbacks mean that we can, it's the see don't tell, isn't it? And the way that he does them and the way that he kind of mixes the now and then is like, I agree, it's really clever. But for me, it also it added a layer of understanding for the girls, and the getting to know them, and when they were that, and they're such wonderful performers, those two girls, the young Carla and young Heather. But for me, being able to expand on that a little bit in a way that I couldn't do in theatre, and without any spoilers, obviously what I'm talking about, but at the end, when we kind of the understanding you get about Carla is so important to the story, in a way that I wish I could put that into the stage version somehow, but I'm not sure. Sure how to do it, but I think he did it brilliantly, and it was a gift to be able to put that in.
Another gift must have been getting to see Natalie and Naomi play these two characters, but obviously at the same time it must have been quite curious for you, having seen so many different iterations of the play throughout his life. No, must have been quite curious at the same time, no, to see the way that they played it compared to how you'd seen it previously, maybe.
No, I've seen quite a few versions of it now, and I mean, it's always lovely to see actors get their teeth into those two roles, because they're just they're really fun, knotty roles for them to get into, and it was just a delight watching those two do it, because they're such incredible actresses, and like they both loved those characters so much, and they really went for it. So it was it's always lovely for a writer to see the actresses just go for it, and they really do. So yeah, I loved it. I feel very lucky that they were.
Oh man, that's fantastic. Yeah. Well, another thing about the kind of, because it does it's kind of talks about the cause and the effects of violence and trauma. There's no real answer to why these things happen, why there is this cycle. So that must have been, I mean, in the writing stage, and when you're initially writing the play, it must have been quite complicated, because people go to see something hoping to maybe leave with answers. So that approaching that side of things must be quite complicated for in the writing stages.
Yeah, but I think the thing is I never want to give people. There's a sort of difference between giving a person your opinion in a play and or giving an audience a chance to see everything laid out and make their own conclusions about it. And the whole point of the play and the film is that you don't actually know whose side you're supposed to be on, and that's kind of life as well, right? Like that's so many situations that people end up in. There are so many nuances to why they happen, and that's what I wanted to do with the play, is just show these two women who on first appearance, you probably make various sort of stereotypical assumptions.
Yeah.
And then you learn more about them, and then you learn even more about them. And so at the end, you realize that, yes, of course, you know, there's a terrible thing that needs to happen, but why and what happens next? There's no good answer to that, and there's no like life. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy, but they kind of the reasons why you get on from both sides, and it makes sense. And I think that's the thing, is that there is no good and bad. There's like so many different, you know, layers to it. And I'm fascinated by that, you know.
And I mean, to add to that, what I loved about this film is the fact that the two actresses are both almost in the same position as the audience, because they even say to each other constantly, "You have no idea what I've been through. You have no idea." And we're just all in the same boat all the way through the film.
It's exactly that. And that's the kind of stuff I get really excited about, because I don't have the answers, and I can't presume to give people an answer. And I kind of, all I hope is that people both love these characters as much as I do, but also it starts conversations about how do we break these cycles of violence and trauma. How, like, we do need to try and figure that out. But yeah, there's a line in both the play and the film where it's like, you know, it's a shame that, you know, we used to be such good friends. And that for me is such a kind of that is the shame.
Yeah. Oh, well, listen, they're giving me that. So thank you so much for your time. I love the film. Can't wait for people to see it, and I hope to speak to you again sometime soon, Morgan.
Thanks so much. Lovely to chat.
All right, thank you. Take care of yourself.